In Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering and sex trafficking trial, in just moments, Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, is set to retake the stand.
It was how Cassie took that stand. You could hear a pin drop when those doors opened, and a visibly pregnant Cassie Ventura walking past a man she had not seen in 6.5 years.
The courtroom fell silent as Cassie Ventura took the stand, and what she revealed stunned everyone. Her explosive testimony against P. Diddy didn't just shake the case, it flipped it on its head. Dark secrets, disturbing allegations, and years of hidden pain came pouring out in chilling detail. Now, nothing about this trial will ever be the same. Start the video now to see what's going on. According to the latest update a few hours ago, the courtroom fell into a heavy, anticipatory silence as Cassandra Ventura took the stand. The air was thick with tension, every eye fixed on her as she settled into the witness chair. The federal case unfolding in this room was already notorious, but now it has reached a critical juncture. Cassandra, a key figure whose words could sway the entire trial, was ready to speak. No cameras. No audio recordings. A strict embargo on all technology meant the world outside had to rely on the raw, unfiltered words pouring directly from this courtroom. Reporters frantically typed, their fingers flying over keyboards, capturing every syllable in real time. The scene was electric, an old-school trial drama in the digital age, where only the most diligent would glean the truth from the whisper of voices and the heavy silence between them. As Cassandra's testimony began, her voice, calm yet charged with a hidden intensity, cut through the quiet. She described moments that had never before been public, details that seemed to unravel the carefully constructed narratives surrounding the case. Each sentence felt like a thread pulled from a tapestry, threatening to unravel the entire story. Her recollections were vivid, sharp, laced with emotion, yet precise. Audience members, packed into the gallery, leaned forward, hanging on every word. Outside the courtroom, those following the live text feed were no less captivated. Questions flowed in real time, sharp, probing, skeptical, challenging Cassandra's every statement, demanding clarity, pressing for inconsistencies. The moderators relayed these questions back into the courtroom through the legal team, creating an intense dialogue that blurred the lines between traditional courtroom decorum and a live, interactive spectacle. With every question answered, Cassandra's narrative shifted and deepened. She revealed alliances and betrayals, moments of fear and flashes of courage. The testimony peeled back layers of deception, exposing hidden motives and shadowy dealings that had only been whispered about before. The atmosphere was electric, almost cinematic, as the audience and reporters alike felt they were witnessing history in the making. Yet, Cassandra's demeanor remained steady, almost enigmatic. There was something about her presence on the stand, a mixture of vulnerability and steel, that commanded respect. She seemed to carry the weight of the moment, but refused to buckle beneath it. Occasionally, a subtle flicker of emotion crossed her eyes, a flash of regret or defiance, only to be quickly masked by a composed exterior. Outside the courtroom, the digital world buzzed with speculation and analysis. Every pause, every hesitation was dissected. Was Cassandra telling the full truth? Or was she carefully tailoring her testimony for maximum impact? The real-time interaction with the audience created a dynamic tension, the kind rarely seen in legal proceedings. It was not just a testimony, it was a battle for hearts, minds, and ultimately justice. For those who don't know the background on Cassandra Ventura and her relationship with Sean Combs, Cassandra Ventura, now 38 years old and heavily pregnant, 8, maybe 9 months along, sat quietly in the courtroom, the weight of her condition almost invisible beneath the hard exterior she wore. The glow of impending motherhood stood in stark contrast to the storm that was her past, a decade-long ordeal that had shaped her into the woman testifying today. Her relationship with Sean Combs began when she was just 19, a young woman stepping into what she hoped would be love, but soon found to be a labyrinth of control, fear, and manipulation. 10 years of entanglement, 10 years of shifting between affection and abuse, trust and terror. From the very start, Cassandra's world tilted on an axis of confusion and emotional turmoil. She spoke softly, yet her words carried the weight of a lifetime lived under pressure. Early on, she felt drawn to Combs, attached to the man who promised her a future but delivered chaos. The emotional grip tightened quickly. What began as nervous excitement soon twisted into something far darker. She described freak-offs, violent eruptions fueled by jealousy and rage, moments when Sean's fury exploded beyond reason. These weren't isolated incidents. Cassandra recounted nights shattered by arguments so fierce they left bruises not only on her body, but on her spirit. Physical abuse was frequent, a brutal undercurrent beneath the surface of their so-called relationship. Each violent episode was more than pain. It was a message, a reminder that her freedom was never truly hers. Then there were the escorts, summoned during these terrifying freak-offs, women who came and went like ghosts, part of a cruel spectacle orchestrated by Combs. Cassandra's voice faltered as she testified about the shame and humiliation she endured, forced to witness scenes meant to break her down further. Worse still, she revealed how these encounters were filmed, explicit videos that would later become tools of her imprisonment. Blackmail, she said, was the cruelest weapon he wielded. Combs used those videos to cage her, threatening to release them if she ever dared to leave or speak out. The digital chains were invisible but unbreakable, tightening around her psyche, eroding any hope of escape. She was trapped in a nightmare where love was twisted into leverage and betrayal was masked as protection. Despite the brutality, Cassandra's testimony revealed a complex emotional landscape. She was not merely a victim, she was a woman ensnared by conflicting feelings, loyalty, fear, and a desperate hope that things might change. The early days were marked by confusion, by an aching need to believe in the man she loved despite the growing darkness. Her pregnancy now adds another layer to this tragic story, an innocent life blossoming amid chaos. It underscores the stakes of her testimony, the urgency of her courage. She is not just fighting for herself, but for the future of her child, for a chance at breaking the cycle of abuse. The following are legal charges and testimony relevance. Charged with sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and racketeering, Combs faced allegations that painted a chilling portrait of systematic exploitation. This was no ordinary trial. It was a reckoning, a battle to expose a hidden network of abuse and control lurking beneath the veneer of power and prestige. At the center of it all stood Cassandra Ventura, her voice poised to tip the scales. Her testimony was not just important, it was pivotal. The prosecution rested much of its case on her courage to come forward, knowing that what she revealed could unravel a web of deception carefully spun over years. Key to the prosecution's argument was a haunting piece of evidence, a video from 2016 captured in a hallway that bore the unmistakable marks of coercion and violence. This footage was more than a glimpse into a personal dispute. It was a window into a pattern of abuse linked directly to the charge of sex trafficking. The prosecution argued that this video was proof that the violence Cassandra endured was not isolated or random, but part of an orchestrated system designed to control, manipulate, and exploit. The video, grainy but undeniable, showed moments of aggression and dominance, physical and psychological control that went far beyond the scope of domestic conflict. Prosecutors emphasized that the violence was a tool in a broader criminal enterprise, not just between two individuals, but tied to racketeering schemes that trafficked women, exploiting them under the guise of personal relationships. The courtroom, hushed and attentive, absorbed the gravity of these revelations. This was about more than one man's cruelty. It was about dismantling a dangerous criminal network. The stakes were staggering. Conviction would mean not only justice for Cassandra, but a seismic blow to the shadowy world that had thrived in silence. Yet the defense was fierce. They sought to cast doubt, painting the video as a misinterpreted fragment, framing the abuse as troubled but private turmoil rather than criminal conspiracy. Their strategy aimed to diminish Cassandra's credibility, questioning her motives and the accuracy of her memories. But with every question, every answer, the prosecution's narrative gained strength. Cassandra's testimony illuminated the dark corridors of coercion, the subtle threats, the explicit blackmail, the physical domination that kept her and others ensnared. Her voice gave flesh to abstract charges, transforming legal jargon into a living, breathing nightmare. For the jury, the challenge was immense. They were asked to see beyond the surface, to understand the layered complexity of a case where love, violence, and crime were tangled together. The prosecution urged them to recognize that this was not a mere domestic dispute, but a calculated operation exploiting vulnerability for profit and power. How about defense arguments and possible jury reactions? Here, the story was reframed, painted in shades of complexity and ambiguity. The defense argued that the relationship between Ventura and Sean Combs was not one of force and coercion, but consensual, with both parties participating willingly. This argument hit the courtroom like a ripple through a stormy sea, unsettling and provocative. It forced everyone watching to wrestle with a difficult question. Where does consent end and coercion begin? Was Cassandra truly a victim or a willing partner caught in a tangled relationship? The answer, the defense insisted, lay in the nuances of their shared history. Adding weight to their claim was the testimony of a male performer, an associate who appeared to partially corroborate the defense's version of events. His statements hinted at moments of mutual consent, of shared decisions within a complex dynamic, suggesting that the relationship was layered with shades of gray rather than stark black and white. The defense urged the jury to consider the possibility that Ventura's accounts, while sincere, might not capture the full picture. They proposed that what the prosecution framed as coercion could be interpreted as a troubled but consensual partnership, one where power and influence were negotiated, not imposed. Yet, at the heart of this trial lies the fundamental question of power imbalance, a concept the prosecution and defense debated fiercely. The defense argued that Ventura's actions reflected agency, but the prosecution painted a far grimmer reality, that no true consent could exist where power was so unevenly distributed. Sean Combs was not just a partner, he was a figure wielding enormous control, leveraging status, fear, and intimidation to dominate and manipulate. The jury's task was monumental. They were asked to peel back layers of testimony, to sift through emotional testimonies, and to interpret the subtle dynamics of power and control. Could they see beyond the surface and understand that what may appear consensual could be the product of deep coercion? Could they recognize that in relationships shadowed by abuse, consent is often a complex, fragile illusion? Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere thickened with every argument, every cross-examination. The jurors, seated silently, absorbed the conflicting stories. Some seemed visibly moved by Ventura's testimony, sensing the courage it took to come forward. Others appeared swayed by the defense's portrayal of mutual participation and by the male performer's testimony, which injected a degree of doubt about the prosecution's narrative. The defense's strategy was clear: create uncertainty. If they could seed enough doubt about Ventura's victimhood, the charges of sex trafficking and racketeering might falter. They aimed to recast the story from one of predation to one of complicated consent, blurring the lines that the prosecution sought to draw with brutal clarity. For the jury, the question boiled down to perspective. Would they see Cassandra Ventura through the lens of a victim trapped by coercion and manipulation, deserving justice and protection? Or would they view her as a partner in a consensual relationship, rendering the charges less clear-cut and the case less compelling? The tension was palpable, not just in the courtroom, but in the hearts of those watching, both inside and outside the legal arena. This was a trial not just of facts, but of empathy and judgment, where understanding power's subtle forces was as critical as the evidence itself. Now let's look at prosecution strategy and trial dynamics. The opening gambit was a parade of corroborating witnesses, voices that would lend weight to Ventura's testimony and weave a tapestry of credible, interconnected accounts. These witnesses, some close to the victims, others experts in the field, painted a picture far larger than one woman's story. Their testimonies hinted at a pervasive pattern, a systemic operation of abuse and exploitation that extended beyond isolated moments. When Cassandra finally took the stand, the courtroom held its collective breath. But the prosecution had primed the ground well. Ventura's credibility, painstakingly established through the initial testimonies, was now their linchpin. What made her story compelling was its honesty, her willingness to acknowledge not only the darkness, but also the rare moments of tenderness in the relationship. She did not present a one-sided narrative of unrelenting cruelty. Instead, she revealed a complex emotional landscape where fear and affection, pain and attachment coexisted. This nuanced testimony was a deliberate tactic by the prosecution. By showing that Ventura did not simply paint her abuser as a monster, but as a deeply flawed, complicated man who could still evoke love, they made her story more believable. It was this delicate balance of light and shadow that underscored the reality of many abuse survivors, relationships that are never purely black or white, but gray and deeply conflicted. The prosecution's narrative did not hinge on one incident alone. It was crafted to demonstrate a pattern, a relentless, orchestrated campaign of abuse spanning years. Each testimony, each piece of evidence, was a thread in a larger fabric designed to reveal a calculated system of control, coercion, and exploitation. The goal was to convince the jury that these were not isolated moments of violence or poor judgment, but a consistent pattern of criminal behavior. The courtroom drama intensified as the prosecution signaled that Cassandra's testimony was just the beginning. Behind the scenes, they prepared to bring forth more victims, women whose lives had been entangled in Sean Combs's web of manipulation. Each new voice promised to deepen the narrative, to reveal the breadth and scope of a racket that trafficked human lives for profit and power. Evidence, too, was piling up, a trove of documents, communications, videos, and digital records that traced the chilling choreography of abuse. These materials were expected to corroborate the survivors' stories and link the accused directly to the criminal enterprise. As the trial progressed, the dynamics shifted with every witness and piece of evidence presented. The prosecution's strategy was not merely to accuse, but to educate, to peel back the layers of silence and denial that often shield such crimes. They sought to immerse the jury in the reality of coercion, the subtle ways power corrupts and controls, making escape seem impossible. Every question posed to Cassandra was a careful probe, designed to reveal the mechanics of abuse without reducing her to a mere victim. Her testimony was a testament to resilience, a challenge to the jury to see beyond surface appearances and confront uncomfortable truths. The prosecution knew the emotional weight of their case. They balanced the raw human stories with cold, hard facts, knowing that justice demanded both empathy and evidence. Their relentless pursuit was not just about securing a conviction, but about breaking a cycle of exploitation and sending a message that no one is above the law. According to experts, the courtroom was charged with a weight far beyond the usual drama of criminal trials. At stake was not just the fate of one man, Sean Combs, but the very idea of justice confronting a complex, shadowy system. Prosecuting a racketeering case under the RICO Act, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Statute, was a legal mountain few had dared to climb, and the prosecution knew the path ahead would be perilous. To secure a conviction on RICO charges, prosecutors must prove the existence of an organized criminal enterprise, a coordinated operation, not a series of random acts. It was not enough to show isolated incidents of abuse or wrongdoing. The law demanded a clear, sustained pattern of criminal activity, intertwined and deliberate, supported by multiple predicate acts. This high legal threshold was the crucible in which the prosecution's entire case would be tested. The challenge was enormous. Racketeering laws were designed to dismantle criminal syndicates, the mafia, drug cartels, and sophisticated fraud rings, not to address the tangled personal horrors of domestic violence. Yet, prosecutors argued this was exactly the kind of abuse that could constitute racketeering when it involved coercion, exploitation, and the trafficking of victims as part of a criminal enterprise. The prosecution's case aimed to peel back the layers of what the defense sought to dismiss as mere personal abuse. They painted a picture of an operation far more insidious, a systematic, calculated network that exploited vulnerable women for profit and power. To the prosecution, this was not a private matter, but a crime syndicate masquerading behind the facade of intimate relationships. But the defense was relentless. They argued fiercely that what was being presented as organized crime was in reality a tragic and disturbing domestic dispute, painful and serious, yes, but personal, not criminal enterprise. They framed the charges as an overreach of the law, cautioning the jury against conflating individual acts of violence with the complex machinery of racketeering. The jury was left to grapple with profound questions. Could acts of coercion and control within a relationship truly be organized criminal activity? Was there enough evidence to show these were not isolated events, but part of a coordinated pattern, linked to the business of trafficking and exploitation? The defense sought to dismantle the prosecution's narrative by focusing on the human elements, the personal histories, the emotional conflicts, and the messy realities of relationships gone wrong. They sought to paint a stark line between personal failings and criminal conspiracies, urging the jury to view the case through a narrow lens. Meanwhile, the prosecution labored to connect the dots. Each piece of evidence, videos, testimonies, digital records, was a strand in the web of proof they were weaving. The 2016 hallway video was pivotal, not just as evidence of violence, but as a symbol of the pattern they claimed to exist. Witnesses described the freak-offs, the coercion, the manipulation, all threads of the tapestry of racketeering. The jury's deliberations were bound to be painstaking. They needed to determine whether these acts formed a pattern that met the stringent legal requirements of RICO. Was the defendant operating a criminal enterprise, or was this a tragic personal saga? The answer would require more than emotion. It demanded legal rigor and careful scrutiny. For the prosecution, this was a test of their ability to translate complex, painful realities into the language of law. For the defense, it was a battle to maintain the boundaries of criminal liability. And for the jury, it was a journey into the heart of a case that blurred the lines between personal trauma and organized crime. The trial's intensity deepened as whispers began circulating about the additional witnesses yet to take the stand, voices from the shadows who might unravel the tightly woven fabric of deception surrounding Sean Combs. The prosecution's next moves were critical. Beyond Cassandra Ventura's courageous testimony, a constellation of others loomed on the horizon. Bodyguards, personal staff, even chefs, each carrying pieces of a puzzle that, if assembled, could expose the dark machinery behind the facade. The courtroom felt like the calm before a storm. The prosecution knew these witnesses were not just bystanders, but potential linchpins. Each could offer insight into the extent of coordination and intent required to sustain the alleged criminal enterprise. This wasn't merely about two people locked in a turbulent relationship. It was about an orchestrated network of complicity where multiple individuals played roles, knowingly or unknowingly, in maintaining the control, the fear, and the trafficking. Bodyguards, those silent sentinels of power, might reveal the guarded secrets of a fortress built on intimidation. Their testimonies could illuminate moments when violence was orchestrated or covered up, when the line between protection and enforcement blurred. Did they witness coercion? Were they mere spectators or active enforcers in the alleged operation? Staff members, from personal assistants to housekeepers, could provide the daily details that paint a broader picture: suspicious patterns of behavior, unexplained absences, or signs of distress masked behind the veneer of luxury. Their accounts could testify to a reality far removed from the public's perception of glamour, exposing a world controlled by fear and manipulation. Even the chefs, figures seemingly removed from the conflict, might hold clues. In quiet kitchens where the tension simmered beneath the surface, they could recount overheard conversations, strange visitors, or subtle shifts in the atmosphere that pointed to a larger, darker reality. Yet, amid these potential revelations, a pivotal question hung heavily in the air. Did Cassandra Ventura hold exclusive access to incriminating videos, or was she but one guardian of a trove of damning evidence? The prosecution needed to prove that these videos were not isolated personal recordings, but instruments of control and blackmail distributed or at least known to others within the enterprise. This issue was more than a technicality. It was a test of whether the alleged criminal conspiracy extended beyond the personal to the organized. If Ventura alone possessed these materials, could this be framed as personal leverage? Or was there evidence that these videos were shared, wielded as weapons within a broader network of intimidation? As the courtroom awaited these additional testimonies, the tension was palpable. Each witness could tip the scales, adding layers of credibility or raising new doubts. The prosecution's case hinged on demonstrating a concerted, coordinated effort, an enterprise where multiple actors contributed to the commission of crimes. But the defense was prepared, watching closely, ready to question the reliability of these witnesses, to challenge their motives, and to suggest that their observations were misinterpreted or exaggerated. They aimed to fracture the narrative of a unified conspiracy by casting suspicion on the credibility and relevance of these additional voices. For the jury, the unfolding testimonies would be a labyrinth to navigate. Could they piece together these scattered accounts into a coherent pattern of criminal activity? Would they see the connections or find the gaps? Every detail, every seemingly minor observation had the potential to unravel or reinforce the prosecution's claims. The public's gaze has been fixed unwaveringly on the courtroom drama unfolding with every passing day. This trial, charged with raw emotion and heavy implications, has transcended the walls of the courthouse to capture the attention of a nation and beyond. The story of Cassandra Ventura, her courage, and the dark allegations against Sean Combs has ignited a firestorm of public interest and debate, transforming viewers into active participants in a collective reckoning. A recent poll shattered any lingering doubts about public sentiment. An overwhelming 82% of viewers watching the trial believe Cassandra Ventura is a victim. This statistic isn't just a number, it's a tidal wave of empathy sweeping through a society eager to see justice served, to acknowledge the pain behind the headlines, and to confront the ugly truths long hidden in plain sight. The turning point in public opinion came with the release of the 2016 hallway video by CNN. A haunting piece of evidence that brought the allegations from whispered rumors and legal jargon into stark, undeniable reality. The footage revealed more than violence. It exposed a moment of raw, unfiltered fear and control. For many, it was the undeniable proof that transformed the trial from a distant, abstract case into a visceral, human story. The hallway video did what no courtroom argument alone could do. It pierced the veil of ambiguity. Viewers, once hesitant or unsure, found themselves grappling with a new clarity. The video's release catalyzed a shift in perception, turning sympathy into conviction, suspicion into certainty. Social media erupted, hashtags trended, and conversations flooded every corner of the internet. The public was no longer passive. They were engaged, emotionally invested, demanding answers, justice, and accountability. Amid this surge of attention, law and crime emerged as a vital conduit between the courtroom and the millions watching at home. Committed to real-time coverage on YouTube, they transformed the trial into a live, unfolding saga, accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Their broadcasts offered more than just legal updates. They provided context, analysis, and a platform for viewers to engage directly through comments and questions. This approach created an unprecedented dynamic. The courtroom's solemn proceedings merged with the immediacy of digital interactivity. Viewers were no longer distant observers. They were part of a virtual audience, collectively experiencing the tension, the revelations, and the heartbreak as they happened. The comments section buzzed with speculation, support, outrage, and calls for justice, reflecting a society grappling with the complex realities of abuse, power, and law. The engagement went beyond mere curiosity. It became a form of collective witness, a shared journey through a narrative that challenged deeply ingrained beliefs about victimhood, consent, and criminal enterprise. Viewers wrestled with difficult questions. How does one prove coercion when love and fear are entangled? Can a pattern of abuse constitute racketeering? What does justice look like in such a complicated, painful story? The public's response was also a testament to the power of media in shaping perceptions and holding institutions accountable. The decision by Law and Crime to provide unfiltered, real-time coverage was a bold one, recognizing that transparency was essential in a case where so much was at stake. It invited the public not just to witness, but to engage critically, to question, and to learn alongside legal experts and journalists. Yet the polarized nature of such a high-profile case meant that not all voices aligned. While the majority believed in Ventura's victimhood, the defense's narrative found pockets of sympathy, reflecting the complexity of public opinion. Some questioned the nature of consent, the interpretation of events, or the reliability of memories under trauma's shadow. This cacophony of voices, however, underscored one undeniable fact. This trial had become more than a legal battle. It was a cultural moment, a reckoning that demanded society confront uncomfortable truths about power, gender, and justice. As Law and Crime continued their live coverage, the story was far from over. Every new testimony, every piece of evidence broadcast in real time, reshaped the narrative and re-engaged a public hungry for truth. The courtroom drama had become a national conversation, where justice was not only sought within the legal system, but demanded by a vigilant, engaged audience. In this crucible of law and public opinion, one thing remained clear. Cassandra Ventura's story had struck a chord that would echo far beyond the courtroom walls, resonating in hearts, minds, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Do you know about legal consequences for Sean Combs, if convicted? The weight of the law loomed heavily over Sean Combs as the courtroom drama unfolded. Each testimony, each piece of evidence inching him closer to a verdict that could irreversibly alter the course of his life. For those watching, understanding the potential legal consequences facing Combs added a layer of gravity that transformed the trial from a mere spectacle to a high-stakes battle for justice, and perhaps redemption. At the core of the prosecution's case were multiple severe charges, each carrying its own perilous potential sentence. The most formidable among them was the racketeering conspiracy charge, a beast of a legal accusation that, if proven beyond a reasonable doubt, could send Combs to prison for life. Racketeering, under the RICO Act, is reserved for those who orchestrate a criminal enterprise, a web of calculated systemic wrongdoing that transcends isolated acts and ventures into organized crime. Conviction on this charge would label Combs not just a perpetrator of personal abuse, but the mastermind behind a sprawling, illicit operation. But the charges didn't stop there. Combs also faced sex trafficking allegations, which the prosecution painted as the heart of the criminal enterprise. These charges carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years, but could extend all the way to life imprisonment, reflecting the horrific nature of exploiting individuals through force, fraud, or coercion. If convicted, this would ensure Combs spends decades behind bars, stripped of freedom for crimes that violate the very dignity and autonomy of human beings. Adding another dimension to the legal peril was the charge of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. While it might seem lesser in comparison to racketeering and trafficking, it nevertheless carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Interestingly, legal analysts watching the case closely suggest that this transportation charge appears to be the most provable offense. The evidence surrounding the movement of individuals under alleged coercion seemed clearer, more tangible, a critical piece of the prosecution's broader strategy. The difference in sentences among the charges underscored the complexity of the legal landscape Combs faced. A conviction on racketeering alone could mean spending the rest of his life in prison, a permanent scar on his legacy. Yet failing to prove the enterprise aspect might still result in decades lost to the trafficking and transportation convictions. Each charge was a thread in the tightly wound net closing around him. What do you think about the latest developments in Diddy's case? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.